Hello, everybody out there. CUT Collective, Christ Universal Temple. It's Reverend Sheree. I'm so excited to be here today. So two things. One, the reason we're here. The reason we're here is that we are going to unpack. We're going to pull out some nuggets out of this week's Sunday sermon. So I'm talking about from February 11th. Reverend Derrick B shared with us, faith accelerates, let there be no strife. And so I haven't changed. I pulled too many clips. We're going to see how many we can get to. But I do want to remind you that this is your rewind. And so you're welcome to share your comments. When I'm able to be on live, I look in the comments during the lesson to see if there's anything that comes out. But that's another place that you can leave comments. So and questions, because sometimes when you're watching it, it's like, oh, we can't be there for 2 hours, but maybe there's a question that you want to ask and just right in the spot. I could grab your question there. I'm open. I could do that. So just want you to know that this is all about you, that I'm having a lot of joy doing it, but this is absolutely in service to the community. Before I bring Rev in, I wanted to just say that there are a couple of invitations I want to give you. Actually, I'm going to bring Rev in and we'll talk about it together. Hello.
What's going on, Rev B?
How are you?
I'm doing amazing, my sister. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be with you today. We're getting it together. It's almost a rhythm. We're on it.
We're doing it.
I love it. I wanted to make sure that so this is something I haven't spoken to Rev about, but he's been with me for all these years, but for the this year in Lent, being able to share it with the collective, this program I've been doing for the past 10 years. This is year 11, and I got an email, Rev, from one of the members. This 30 years in the game with CUT, who said, like, I just saw this thing. I love it. I enrolled today. And I told her she made my day. She absolutely made my day, because it is, there's always something new, right? You could have been doing something for 30 years and here she is finding something new that interested her. So that was great. When I think about the work it takes to do any of the things that we do, it just takes one to say that was for me, and it makes it more than worth it.
Amen to that. No, yes. I think, well, one, let me celebrate and honor with you, and honor and celebrate you for this being your 11th year doing this. Like, I think that's absolutely amazing, right? And the amount of commitment and dedication that it requires to be in the flow of what God intends to do through you, it requires us being active in our own rescue and being on the side of our purpose and responsibility. So I just want to honor your yes and your commitment for bringing this to us. And I also, during our Ash Wednesday service, shared with the folks who attended, whether they were in person or watching online or watched at a later time, like to just share with us collectively to make sure that we, even though the ministry is not doing a formal Lenten season lessons, it's each individual's responsibility to plug into the opportunity that comes with Lent. So I'm excited that this is another option that we have to make sure that we eliminate the things that we need to eliminate, so that we can make the room and create the capacity for what God really seeks to do through our lives. And so this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to offer it to our folks, and to have you as the guide to take us through that soul transformation. So I think it's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just working to do it bigger and better. So it's been good. It's been fun to grow.
Good. That's great.
Yeah. Ain't been graceful all the time, but it's been fun.
Hey, listen, sometimes it looks funny before it looks fine.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's pray us in, and then we're going to dive into these 20,000 clips I pulled.
All right. So as we just take a moment to consciously and intentionally center ourselves, we touch, agree, and recognize the presence and power of God right now, mighty in our midst. I invite you to, if you're able to, just allow yourself to be completely engaged in this moment. Allow yourself to release the cares and concerns that may have accompanied you to this rewind. Allow yourself to be selfish enough to push all of those things to the back burner, push them out of the forefront of your mind so that you can be present for the blessing God has for you on this evening or whenever you watch this. Allow yourself to fully embrace the seeds of good that will be planted in the soil of your soul and produce the abundant harvest that reveals the pattern of perfection of God seeking to express in, through, and as you right here and right now. In this moment, we allow ourselves to be open. We allow ourselves to be clear. We allow ourselves to be committed. We give ourselves permission to get our good. We don't need anybody's agreement to say yes to our blessings. Mm-hmm. And so I invite you to make yourself wide open. As in the New Thought movement, we say, allow yourself to be open at the top. And as you're open at the top, you meet God at the top. And the presence and power of God is in this very moment, pulling each of us up by our souls so that we might be renewed by our minds. And the good thing about being renewed by our minds and being transformed in our minds is that it gives us the ability to prove the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God for each and every one of us. I believe God has a blessing for you on this evening or on this afternoon or on this morning. And I invite you to not only receive, but embrace your good, embrace your blessing in this moment. Amen and amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are revving to go. And I don't have 1,000 clips, but I do have more than the time allotted, but it's so good. It was so many good ones. You know, that this, you brought it this Sunday. And so you're talking about a couple of my favorite topics, but honestly, I love to talk about grace because it is the most nonsensical thing that you can really wrap your mind around if you're trying to understand God. But I love the emphasis on grace for yourself, like to give yourself some grace. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really, really lovely. And I have some good stuff to pull out from that. But you're working still with the story of Abram and the promise and having to leave his father's house, his country, his father's house, and his kindred. Mm-hmm. And what I think is really interesting is how you begin with this disobedience. So I want to actually play this part because I want to bring the actual verse into the atmosphere. So I'm going to play this first one.
All right.
Now Lot, somebody say now Lot, who went with Abram also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them living together. For their possessions were so great that they could not live together. And there was strife between the herders of Abram's livestock and the herders of Lot's livestock. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herders and my herders, for we are..." What was he supposed to leave behind? What's with him out here? What was he supposed to leave behind? What's with him out here? Kindred. See, sometimes when you decide to go from the guttermost to the uttermost, things that you meant to leave behind somehow still manage to attach themselves to where you're going. And nowhere in the scripture does it say that Abram invited Lot. Nowhere does it say that Abram encouraged Lot to leave as well. But some things don't need your invitation or permission to come to you or come with you when you decide to grow.
So some fire. Like I said, all I got today is some fire. So this is real personal to me, people. Just so you know, this might end up being a public coaching session.
I like a little bit of personal conviction, right? I like a little bit of personal conviction, and someone else said to me on yesterday at the Lenten service, and you're minister teacher, so this happens occasionally. That someone says you were talking directly to me. I don't know how you know what I'm going through, or the other extreme where maybe someone thinks you know about what they're going through, and so then they assume that what you're saying is about them. You've heard it said before, there's only one mind. Yes. And the mind of God knows exactly what you need and what message you need and what messenger you need to hear that through to grab your attention, right? Yes. Because all of us can't hear from from certain messengers, right? There are some people who don't want to hear your message. Like they don't care how good it is. There's some people who just don't have a hearing for you.
Yep.
But God knows what you need to hear and who you can hear it from. Mm-hmm. So let me just offer this disclaimer. I'm never, ever, ever consciously and intentionally talking about anybody. Like, I've got too much of my own stuff to work on to ever spend the time I'm supposed to, where I'm responsible for giving teaching and giving leadership. I've got too much of my own stuff to work on to be in myself enough to be talking about somebody else's stuff. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'm just not into anybody's business in that way. So you feel like I'm talking to you because it's a God thing, and God uses who God chooses. So
that's right. That's right.
Exactly what you mean, Reverend. So listen, if we need to coach it up in here, we do that as well.
Yeah, it is truly, when you think about it literally and just what's going on in your soul, which is all the same thing, that you move off on a journey and you do take these thoughts and feelings that you didn't say, hey, I'm going to bring all my fear and I'm going to bring some of this disorganization and I'm going to bring this right into my new thing. So not upon invitation, do you bring your lots, right?
That's right. That's right. They accept your movement as the gateway for them to come along.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so some of the things you said along in this section, one just about, we hear in the beginning, not so much disobedience. I mean, it's disobedience in that you were told to leave your kindred. Kindred comes along for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And the end of the verse is about strife, right? So right there you can see the disobedience and the repercussions of said disobedience. Because Absolutely. If you have to say, let there be no strife, that meant that there probably was some.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. and interestingly enough, the strife wasn't between Abram and Lot. Like Abram and Lot really didn't have a problem, although Abram and Lot are kindred. The herdsmen aren't kindred. Abram and Lot are. So Abram is supposed to leave the kindred. Lot comes along, and strife follows that. You describe it as disobedience. Strife follows the discontinuity when the Holy Spirit directs us. And for whatever reason, we haven't been intentional about separating or distinguishing ourselves as we prepare for the journey to ensure that there aren't parts that we've been told to leave alone, to leave behind, that still attach themselves to us as stragglers. And those stragglers create strife, even though it's not between the two principles.
Right.
Still strife in the midst of the experience, and the strife among your people produces strife in me. Right? The strife in my thoughts and feelings produce strife in me. The strife in your thoughts and feelings produce strife in you. And so when we get together, even though we have no strife, there's strife among us because our people have strife. Our people had beef.
Right. It is a like I said, it works. It works however you want to position yourself around the story. I know you can see yourself in it. And I like to see where sometimes we think things just happen to us, right? Like that, this fell apart. But when you really get to the space where you're loving yourself enough to be able to look at your experiences objectively and to say, okay, divine order is my way. So this wasn't in order. What do I need to adjust? And so I go back to, did you follow directions, right? Like that's number one. And so that's helpful to me, not to beat myself up, but to make my adjustments.
Absolutely.
Your dot says it works if you work it. That's right. You gotta.
Right.
If only it worked if you said it, right? That would be so much easier. Like it works if you say it.
On one level, it does work if you say it.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you say it, that's the work in spoken form.
Right.
So we are so holistic that all of the expressions of consciousness feed into and flow out of the same awareness.
Yes. And that's why I always I have to mind myself, because I think I'm funny. So sometimes funny things come out my mouth, but that are not the things I want to eat. Like I don't want to come back and have that experience that I just said, even though it was quite hilarious. Like that. That's
right.
Not what I want.
I was just joking, but the universe does not play. Right. It takes me at my word.
Yes. I have to find some new ways to be funny. That is for sure. So I pulled a couple more clips. This one's good. So some of these are kind of quick, but I really want to talk about, because you're going into the space of how to deal with this, right? So you did it already. You made the choice. Lot is coming along with his folks. You there with your folks, and now we here, right? We're out here. And so how do you handle this? One of the things you said is, what do you do? I think I pulled this one up as a banner because I thought it was pretty hot. It was, what do you do when your relationships are in the way of your opportunity? What do you do? So this clip is, I believe, a good response to that, and then we can bounce off of it from there.
All right.
It's critical that we be able to handle those relationships with grace, hope, and mercy. It's important to be able to bring these sisters of faith into our journey, because you're really only in relationship with yourself.
Isn't that the truth?
And to the extent that I choose violence to deal with my lot, that'll be the extent to which I am experiencing violence on the inside. Are you with me? And so rather than choose violence, Abram says, let there be no strife. Is that right? By show of hands, how many of you know someone who has a tendency to bring their past into their present? If they're sitting next to you, like, just keep looking this way. The reality is we've all adopted patterns. They might be family patterns. They might be cultural patterns. They might be communication patterns. They might be relationship patterns. They might be trust patterns. We've all adopted these patterns as a means by which to observe, support, and navigate our way of being in the world. We use these patterns because they make traversing life easier.
So I wanted to leave a part in there about the patterns, because I think that you really hit the why. Like sometimes you think, well, how did I fall into these patterns? That it served you.
Absolutely.
They served you. At some point they served you. And you just may still be living in those patterns, operating out of those patterns, and you're discovering that don't work anymore.
Yes. See that, and that's why the lots in our life don't need an invite, because they're baked into the patterns, right? The lots in our life don't need to be encouraged to come with us, because they're baked into our habits of thinking, and our habits of believing, and our habits of behaving. And so when we come out, when we choose to come out, we think we're leaving those things behind. But the reality is the patterns within the soul, whether they are patterns of perfection, patterns of possibility, or patterns for being stuck in problems, those naturally migrate out with us. And so when the direction comes to leave your country, to leave your father's house, your kindred, and your country, we think those are just places, but we know every place represents a state or stage of consciousness, right? And so the patterns of consciousness must be dealt with, because I can only bring my consciousness with me wherever I go. And so when God directs Abram to leave those things behind, what God is really saying is there's some work to do before you go. But Abram is thinking, I've done the work, right? I've left behind everything that you said leave behind, except we see that the work is not complete.
Right.
Get out. And so for us, sometimes we think we've done the faith work, and then we're facing the promise, we're facing the dream, we're facing the goal, we're facing the challenge, and then the pattern of fear pushes to the forefront, or the pattern of doubt pushes to the forefront. Well, I've done my faith work. Why is this doubt showing up? It's because I haven't left that pattern, right? I have reconditioned the pattern. I've done some faith work, right? But I haven't done the amount of faith work, or grace work in this case. I haven't done the amount of grace work that allows me to lovingly release that which no longer serves me and is not fit to be on this journey. So those patterns, those habits of thinking and believing and behaving, they just naturally come along because they're baked into consciousness.
Right.
That's why the work is all in consciousness. The more consistently and this is why Lent is so important, the more consistently I work to eliminate those negative aspects of the soul, the more easily I'm able to move without the burden of those patterns, of those past patterns.
Yeah. And it's amazing how you find that, when you've been operating a certain way, I call it the hard way, right? You've been doing the hard way for so long that you forget that until it's over. You're like, wait a minute. Like, I did not have to have this hassle. I did not have to have this burden, this drain. And look now what I have the energy to do. That's how we move farther, faster, because it is an unburdening process.
Absolutely.
This next clip. Okay. This is kind of a gut punch. I'm going to go ahead and play it. But just, protect your gut, or let that gut be wide open and feel this punch.
Should I apologize ahead of time?
You did already.
In this Okay. Would you like to apologize? There's no post apology. Can I post apologize?
You can post apologize. All right, here you go. You know, you did it. You said it.
I'll apologize.
And like
Too late.
Abram, there are some
late.
patterns
Oh, wait a minute.
that are suitable for where you were.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this the one? Wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to play. Did I just play this?
But not suitable for where you're going. And when we realize that we have these unproductive patterns traveling with us, it's again important that we know how to apply grace, hope, and mercy. So I submit to you that faith accelerates our grace.
Okay, here we go.
Grace, hope, and mercy. So I submit to you that faith accelerates our grace.
Okay, this is the one.
So whenever we find ourselves stretching out in faith and leaning out on the Lord, the question that you have to answer, and only you can answer this question for yourself, the question you have to answer for yourself is your promise important enough to you that you will give yourself the grace you need in order to protect it? Whatever the promise is, will you give yourself the grace you need to protect it? Why do you say that, Rev? I say that because whenever you decide to stretch out, one of the things you eventually learn is that your baggage has some baggage. Whenever you decide to stretch out, one of the things that you'll find is that there are these voices within you that are whispering to you about what you cannot do and what you cannot be and what you cannot have. And if you don't give yourself enough grace to be able to quiet those voices without believing them, then you'll convince yourself that what the Lord promised you is not yours. It takes grace for yourself to stand up within yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
The real question is your promise important enough to you that you will give yourself the grace? Like there's a lot going on in that one. So talk to me about how to deal and some of this comes out in the lesson too, but how to deal with those negative voices that, you said to give yourself grace enough to know that they're there, but not to allow them to direct your path. What are some ways to kind of thwart that? Because they're there.
So for many of us, we are our own harshest critic, right?
Mm-hmm.
For many of us, we, right? Like you have a good girlfriend or a good homie who's going through something, and you find it within yourself to walk with them through it. And because there's some space or detachment between the intensity of their experience and your experience as a guide, you're so far removed that you can see the picture because you're not in the frame, right? Mm-hmm. So for many of us, when we're immersed in the intensity of that experience, we lose sight of the promise. And in losing sight of the promise, we find ourselves being removed further and further away from the promise, because there is something within us that is attempting to convince us that which God promised is too big, too much, too far, an impossibility. Mm-hmm. As if omniscient God has no idea about what God is talking about, right? So one of the things that it's important we be able to do is ground ourselves, one, in the truth, remembering that there is only one presence and one power in all the universe, God, the good omnipotent. And unless my internal voice is echoing that refrain, I can begin to pick apart and disqualify what the voice is telling me, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost like being an attorney who's arguing a case, and you argue from the evidence that you've acquired. Well, all of us have enough evidence to quiet those menacing voices within us, the
Right.
voices that have the ability to move us off of our square, take us off of our path. All of us have more than enough evidence where we've seen God in action, or where we've seen ourselves in action. But oftentimes, what we neglect to do is to challenge what the voice is telling us, right?
Right.
If something in me that's telling me that I'm not enough, I get to challenge that voice and present my case and bring forth my evidence to make the case for why I am, right? So sometimes what I do when I'm coaching folks is, like, I encourage them to compile your list of accomplishments, whatever that is. Graduated this, accomplished that, led this project, built this family, built this business, volunteered here, gave there, taught here, shared there, so that when those voices start to speak, you can reach for the evidence that you already have handy, rather than, because the voices have their case already lined up.
Mm-hmm.
Times what we don't have is we don't have our case to disprove the voice lined up. And the strongest argument and the most persistent argument often wins. So one of the things I would say is begin to build your case. Like, if I'm Abram and the voices are telling me that I'm not worthy of the promise, one of the first things I do is remind myself that, oh no, I must be worthy of the promise because God gave it to me, right? God didn't make a mistake in saying to me, Abram, do X, Y, and Z. If I'm Abram and the voices, those negative, detracting voices start to speak to me, I make the case by saying, oh no, I've got enough courage to do it because I've already left my father's house. I've already left limitation. I've already left that comfort zone. In this experience, yep, I can cite past experiences, but in this moment right here, I've already taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps away from that other version of myself. So while you're trying to convince me that I don't have what it takes, I've already proven that I have what it takes, right? I just haven't entered into the promise yet, but I've absolutely proven that I'm up to the task. So anything in me trying to convince me that I'm not the right one, and I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not gifted enough, all of that is noise. And I quiet the noise by presenting a well-crafted, well thought out argument, case, evidence for why I am exactly what God said I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's a, in terms of preparing for a journey, one of the things you need to pack, it sounds like, is the truth about you, right? What's true about me? I am, what can I accomplish? Because you're going to need it.
Mhm.
Ernestine said that she tries to quiet the negative noise. Sometimes it's difficult. And I used to say, I would already come at, no, it's not difficult. Yes, it is. But you can handle it, right? You can handle it because I talked this morning during Lent about belief and the power of belief. And it wasn't even supposed to be my lesson. I had another lesson on prayer, prepare and plan. But I ended in the space of belief, but reminding everybody there that you have mastery, authority, and dominion over everything that's moving around in your mind, over your entire mind. You have mastery, authority, and dominion over. And so the ability to shift is right within your grasp. The ability to think another thought is
Absolutely.
right within your grasp. Or you can choose
Absolutely.
to continue that train on in that pattern that you already know the pattern's not working for you because it's got your attention in a way, right? When you're flowing with something, you're not sitting here thinking about it. You're just moving with it, right? But when you get that unrest, it's like, so this paradigm isn't, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to work like this anymore. And so this idea of holding yourself with grace, because I think that we can be very critical of ourselves when we're trying to correct. When we're trying to realign, when we're trying to make adjustments, we can be really critical. And so you may have to practice this. And that's why I like, it's more than just loving yourself, but giving yourself some grace, because that unmerited favor, just that attaches to the definition of grace, right? Maybe you don't think you deserve love, but you can give yourself some grace because there's no attachments when you use the word grace. Like that just comes unattached.
Right.
So I appreciate that.
Yes. And so I agree. I agree that it can be hard. Right. And I also agree that maybe there is something in me that believes that I am unworthy of this opportunity. Right. And so those things can make the shift hard.
Yeah.
And so I would offer, when you find that it's hard, then you lean into grace even harder.
Right.
Right. Like meet it with the same level of intensity. Because if the negative voice is consistent, or the negative thoughts are consistent, then my opportunity is to be just as consistent with the grace, if not more so. Right. So then I might spend the next 5 minutes consciously rehearsing the words of grace. Right. It might be something as simple as, I have the unmerited favor of God. I have the unmerited favor of God. Put some of your favorite music on, set your timer on your clock, and just for the next 5 minutes, I have the unmerited favor of God. I have the unmerited favor of God. Because if the negative voice is not relenting, then I have to be intentional about being unrelenting in the way in which I give myself grace. I want that same level of intensity. And when I set that timer and I'm committing myself to being focused in this short time span, I'm not suggesting that the negative voice won't creep in, but I tell you what, there won't be as much space for it, right? Because as soon as it creeps in, the next second after that, you're saying, I have the unmerited favor of God. I have the unmerited favor of God. There's not a lot of space to take up residence in the soul. And so what starts to happen is, as the mind is holding this idea about God's grace for you, the subconscious nature begins to be conditioned by this unmerited favor of God. And now it's not just the conscious mind that's working to remind you that you have the unmerited favor of God. Now it's the subconscious mind working to bring into your life expressions of unmerited favor of God. Right? Like it can be seemingly mindless to identify the examples. Like something as simple as being out, needing a parking space. There's not usually a parking space. When you arrive at your destination, your parking space is there. Now, a parking space is not a big deal, unless of course you recognize that your subconscious made it so that you could have the parking space right up front. Right? Now, if I see it as disconnected from my subconscious programming, I can bypass that experience and give it no thought. Right. If I get as connected to the unmerited favor of God, making favor for me right up front, then I recognize that my conditioning is working. So what do I have now when I make the case? I've got more evidence. I've got more evidence.
Reverend Della used to call that proof of the truth. I got some proof of the truth.
Oh, Rev. Yep.
Yeah. Yes. And you need that, right? Like we need some proof of it so that she was big on talking about God with skin on it. And so proof with the truth was like, this is the God expression. I can see it. I created that. I opened up a space where I want it, right?
Yeah.
That's totally it.
You have to be on the lookout for it. Like don't chalk those experiences up to random circumstance, right? Recognize that it's proof of truth.
At every step.
Mm-hmm.
At every step. So all right, so I scrubbed ahead a little bit. I have no idea where we're going to land. Let's just see what plays.
And lift every voice and sing one of the lyrics is, stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days where hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place where our Father sighed. If hope dies before you ever get a chance to enter the promise, you never enter the promise. And hope is often one of the first things to go when we face challenges. Hope enables us to expand our capacity, and the lack of hope closes off the possibility. And as a result, the chemical effect of negative, unproductive thoughts and feelings is that it blocks the healing flow. Now, God is a healer and a reconciler, but I'm so powerful that in my negative state, I can block the good that God is trying to do through me. So, if through my negativity, I can block God, through my positivity, I can be in the flow of the power of God. And through that power, I can combine it with hope, and then there's nothing that I can't do.
That's right, come on.
My hope determines what's happening inside here. So Abram decided to separate from that which no longer served him. How did he do it? One, he realized that he didn't have any opposition. Somebody say, I have no opposition. There may be an obstacle, but there's no opponent. Repeat after me. I'm in relationship with myself. All of my lots are the byproduct of what's happening on the inside of me. To the extent that I can align my thinking with my faith and my hope and my grace, and I can allow the mind of God to be the mind that is in me, that thinking will allow me to be aligned with my promise, and I can take aim right at my promise. Sometimes things just come to.
Okay, wait a minute. All right, so I didn't put a separator between those. So many good things. So first, I want to talk about, because I think that the clip about hope and how you can lose hope at the first, and I know everybody's been through this, that you don't get the outcome that you wanted. Right? You move forward and something didn't happen the way you wanted it, and you lose hope because you're staring so firmly at the outcome. And so immediately upon looking at that, you talk about how you block the flow. But that's the same, if you can block the flow, you can unblock it. It's exactly what I needed to hear.
Right? Yes. Gary Simmons says you're either the way of God or you're in the way of God. Right? So I'm either in the flow or I am interrupting my flow. But there is no external cause. There's only me happening to myself, right? And so what I want to make sure I'm doing is staying in hope or continuing to have that expectation of good regardless of what is appearing. Now, again, that's not always easy, but it is always a part of the process, right? So if I let my hope be consumed, and as I said in the lesson, for whatever reason, hope is often one of the first things that's challenged when things don't go the way we want them to go. So maybe that's an indication that my hope muscle, my expectation muscle, needs to be developed more. It doesn't necessarily mean that the promise is rejected permanently. Maybe what it means is that there is some more spiritual muscle. There's some more soul muscle to build. And this is the resistance training you need in order to build that muscle, right? So as I develop the muscle, I put myself back in the flow of God's good. It's a process. I have to learn how to be comfortable with and in the process.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the aim, because I think that it is very easy to believe that, or to get caught up in the belief that you're not completely in control of your experience, right? And so that means that people can come in and block your way. And so it's like you're constantly battling, I think, internally. I know I can be sometimes with remembering my power and looking at my experience through the right lens, because it looks like it's them as opposed to they're just a projection of my belief pattern, right? And so the idea about being unstoppable, because this series is titled Faith Accelerates. And I think that, for anybody that has a dream or a desire, we want to be about the Father's business, right? You want to be and be about your assignment. Absolutely. And so the idea of acceleration is exciting, right? Like, I don't want to just mosey my way to my promise. I want to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
As quickly as possible.
As quickly as possible. I want to be in it. I want to be experiencing my new land.
Absolutely.
And so there's so the idea that it is through these you call them sisters of faith, right? That through grace, mercy, and hope, that if we begin to galvanize that together, right? So that I can be in alignment, pointing it at my promise, pointing it at my desire, that accelerates me to get there. Right.
Yeah. So the word I want to grab, Rev, is alignment, right? If I can be in alignment, because being out of alignment, or let me say it this way. If you've ever had a car and the car needed a wheel alignment, car has 4 tires. Let's just say only one of the 4 tires is misaligned or in need of a wheel alignment. Well, what we know is that as that one tire is misaligned, it starts to pull you off course. Right. And it takes concentration, it takes attention, it takes intention, it takes effort to course correct for that one wheel that's misaligned and attempting to pull you off course ever so slightly. Now, when I'm driving a car and driving down the road, and the stripes or the lane dividers are indicating to me when I'm on and off course, and the steering wheel is not at 12 o'clock, it's somewhere, the center of the steering wheel is somewhere around 1 o'clock, it's easy to identify that I'm being pulled off course, and it's easier to course correct. But when it comes to the soul work, generally speaking, there are no indicators on the road that show you where one lane divides from another. Generally, there is no steering wheel, physical steering wheel, that lets you know when the steering wheel, rather than being aligned at 12 o'clock, is tilting toward 1 o'clock. there is no indication oftentimes that we are off course until we arrive someplace we never intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to know how to do the various elements of the soul work that help us stay aligned with that which we're aiming toward. Right? And so when I have grace for myself and for those who show up in my experience, who if I'm not understanding that expression mirrors impression, I can mistakenly believe that they are an opponent when I have no opponents. I'm always my own experience. They're just the outer expression of the inner activity. Mm-hmm. Right? And so when I get an opportunity to know how to deal with myself and know how to deal with the external presentations, I bring myself back into alignment, right? In grace.
Right.
When I allow myself through hope to continue, irrespective of the external appearances, to hold the hope for the desired future outcome, it requires some level of tenacity to remain in hope when things don't look like they're going the right way. But holding on to that is much like holding on to the steering wheel and course correcting whenever I find myself getting off course, right? Or being pulled ever so slightly off course. Right. So I don't have to wait until I end up in the wrong place or at a destination I hadn't planned for to start to course correct. Now there is an intelligence in the soul that lets me know when I'm off. Mm-hmm. Right? There is an awareness that helps me to identify the strife that's around me. That strife is telling me that things are not right. Right? That strife is telling me that something is off, because if I have no opponents and I'm still experiencing strife, that's an indication that something is misaligned. Right? So it's pointing me back. The external experience is pointing me back to some internal work. And as I get busy doing that internal work, it brings me back into alignment. And that being in alignment helps me stay focused on my aim, so that when I get ready to shoot at the target, or when I get ready to move into the promise, or when I get ready to see that which God promised to show me, my vision is not blurred by all of the external stuff. I've brought myself into alignment through faith, expressing his great grace, hope, and mercy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that alignment is what we're working with. So I love that Ernestine is saying, yes, out of balance means you need to realign. And I think that the metaphor of being on that journey, because I don't know about you, but I've wound up in destinations like, how did I get here? Like, this wasn't where I was going. This wasn't what I put it by GPS, but I was ignoring the turn signals. The turns. Mm-hmm. I was picking my own way. Oh Lord. I told y'all this is gonna turn into Sheree's coaching session. Okay. Let me give this one. So one of the things that you go into in the sermon is about that relationship, right? That sometimes you are again on this journey. You set it up at the top where you're on a journey and you realize that, you know, you took something you weren't supposed to take, right? You took a person, you're on a journey with someone, and that relationship is not for your future self. It's not for the promise. And so there was some processing to do for that. So yes. I want to play some for the it was a great thing to listen to on Valentine's Day. I'm going to play some of that for everybody.
For every time there is a season. And sometimes the season for this thing meets its end. And so when it meets its end and the credits start to roll, it doesn't mean that the movie was wrong. It just means that it's over. And you get to let it be over without making the movie director yourself, because the only movie that's playing is the one that you've directed. So when the credits start to roll, recognize that you've called forth the end of the relationship. And so here's what I encourage you to do when your decision disrupts somebody else's expectation. Be patient. Be patient. You've had time to think about this. Remember, before you left, you toiled. You're like, what is this going to mean if I make this decision? It had you up some nights, walking the floor, trying to figure out, what does it really mean to me? What am I going to become if I decide to do this? You've had time to think about it. It's brand new to them. You just dropped it on them. So be patient.
Yes. So I thought that would be an appropriate clip for the end to talk about that. That, number one, it can't be overstated that relationships have a lifespan, right? And that they are, and it's not that you can't be reborn in a relationship and create a new lifespan for it, but that they do have a lifespan. And you talked about the so like I said, I could have pulled a lot of clips, and I thought I had pulled about the I called it the avatar meets the representative, that that we're presenting a version of ourselves. We meet each other at some version of ourselves. Absolutely. And we are wearing whatever mask we're wearing at that particular time. Whatever we said yes to about ourselves is what we're meeting. And so it just makes sense that at some point the relationship dynamic has to change, because you change.
Yeah, no, like you right. So you all made agreement. So the avatar met the representative, and they made an agreement at that stage, right? And again, neither the avatar nor the representative presented holistically. They each presented a version, or the best version of what they wanted the other to experience. And then one or the other or both grow, whether they grow up or grow in some other way, right? But they each grow. The thing we have to remember is that the avatar they agreed to when you grow is no longer you, right? Or it's no longer a complementary version of you. You probably don't even present that way any longer. And so when you decide that it's time for you to grow, your growth is basically changing the rules in the middle of the game, right? We've been playing by a certain set of rules, and your growth necessarily causes those rules to be changed. And when the rules change, it brings about necessary endings, right?
I mean, I think every love song is based on the story, right? We don't even talk anymore. Like,
we don't even know what we are about, right? Yep.
There is a absolute opportunity, I think, for us to listen to this sermon again. And go ahead, Rev.
Right. Let me just drop a pin right here. Like, we don't even talk anymore. And we see the evolution of the relationship from when the avatar met the representative and all you did was talk. Right? That's how you got there. You both over communicated in order to move the possibilities along. And the growth, whatever that means for each person, and regardless of the nature of the relationship, it can be a business relationship, it can be an intimate relationship, it can be a familial relationship, it can be a work relationship. The nature of the relationship is immaterial. What's consistent is the expansion of the soul and the way in which that expansion produces necessary endings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about something that someone said to me that I didn't realize was an agreement that they had with me. And so they were having a not so great day, and it was all over everything they said and did. And it was, everything was contentious. Every communication, every interaction was contentious. And I don't like that kind of energy. So I'm like, hey, what's the problem? Like, what's going on? What is there something you want to share? Let's put it out in the air so that we can lift it. Right. And so this person said, I just want to work. I can't match your energy today. So I didn't realize that they had made an agreement to match my energy. And I said, you never have to match my energy. Be where you are, who you are, right?
Right.
Because I never want to match where you are right now, for sure. I don't want to match that.
Right.
But we're making these agreements with each other at whatever level of awareness we are at that point, just exactly what you said. And then we're holding each other to be the same. Mm-hmm. And I think that produces so much of the chaos in our relationships, and this idea of not knowing when it's time to let go. Mm-hmm. And so you talked about that. And again, we're talking about grace, hope, and mercy. And I feel like that's a really good space to wrap us out in, because there may be a time when, if this is a relationship experience that you're having, that the representation of Abram and Lot is really you in a relationship. And it is time for that relationship to end. It's no longer, it's like you said, it's strife now. We have strife.
Absolutely.
Our baggage is at it, right?
Our baggage.
And our baggage got baggage, and they don't get along. Nobody's
right.
getting along.
And can't support them, right? Like they're not meant. They're not meant to live in this season. They're not meant to be together.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in this space, this is our opportunity first, because those were some powerful directions, and it could seem you can miss it. That especially when you're the one courageous enough to notice it and to speak on it and to take an action about it, right? Mm-hmm. That the other person may be caught off guard. They may be, they didn't get the processing time. They didn't have the revelation. It will feel like they got blindsided. And in that space, it is, though you are clear as a bell,
right.
In that space to give grace.
Right.
To give grace.
It's unreasonable. It's unreasonable to expect them to arrive where you are when you didn't arrive there that quickly either. Right. Right. So that's why faith accelerates mercy. And while the grace is unmerited, the mercy isn't, right? And so the same way in which you were allowed some mercy in between the time you saw the possibility, the time you accepted it, the time it took you to move on it, and the time it took you to finally, eventually step into the courage to share it, that like it probably didn't happen overnight, but the mercy that you give needs to be accelerated because you know what you went through. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so you can give to someone else mercy when you were able to give yourself the grace to move through those stages, right? Without giving up on yourself because it took you some time to get from idea to execution, right? It took you some time to get to I do, or it took you some time to get to I don't any longer, right? And the expectation that someone else will be able to process that your shift quicker than you did is just unreasonable. The other thing I want to just add is talking about the agreements, right? Like we don't realize that agreements are being made and or assumed, but agreements always come with expectations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Times, not only is the agreement not communicated, but the expectations aren't communicated. And so we're expecting people to live up to expectations that we never told them we had of them.
That's
Right.
right.
And mercy allows us to be patient with them, in part because we never communicated our expectations to them. And so when they respond or react the way they react, my mercy allows me to be patient and understand that just like I had a process, they have a process too. Just like I was uneasy, they might be uneasy too. Just like it turned my world upside down, it may have blown up their world.
Yeah. I mean, these so you all may not know this about me. We're getting to know each other out here in the CUT land, but relationships are my favorite. I love talking about relationships. I absolutely do. What I do in my coaching practice, it's my favorite. And so like I could talk to you all day about this. This has been so juicy. Who's giving the word this coming Sunday?
Gavin.
Okay. So
Gavin,
I'm gonna lock Gavin down because Gavin and I have appointments that we missed, but we're gonna make it happen next week, and we're gonna come absolutely live with you again next week out here in the collective land. I am so excited. I feel a healing right now in this space. I don't know about you. You know, James said agreements and expectations must be communicated. Yes, I know I needed to hear that again. That you may have agreements you haven't communicated, that you may have expectations that you have not communicated, and that you're holding someone to. And this is an opportunity to free yourself and to free them from these unspoken expectations, and watch let there be no strife. Watch the peace abide in the midst of your relationships. I believe that for you.
Amen.
And I'm grateful. Yes.
I'm touching and agreeing with that as well.
So me and you'll be back soon, Rev. When you're back up at bat, I want to encourage everybody.
Let's say 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, okay. So I want to encourage everybody because a lot of what we're talking about here is about the soul work it takes to stay on course. And so this special Lenten experience is, I call it a spiritual intensive, because it's not just reading an inspiration every day to say, I'm reading from my Lenten text and this is what's going on, and I'm fasting from something. It's an immersion. It's a fasting, a feasting, and a focus. And it will accelerate you like you wouldn't believe the breakthroughs that happen. And so year after year, people come back like, oh, last Lent I was working with this, and they're talking about what's happening in their lives now. And so it is, there's some proof of the truth, right? I'm not selling something that I don't know works. And so I want to encourage you to enroll in the experience. Now, what I'm doing is blasting it out in these different forms, so you can catch some of the lesson. I mean, I'm putting out a lot of the lesson actually right now. And I'll keep doing that as long as Spirit guides me to do that. But when you join the community, what you get are the tools and resources and the after party where there's the conversation and discussion, and it's really, really potent. And there's just such a loving group of people from all over the US that are a part of it. So I just want to invite you to that. And so I did another coupon code because it's the 11th year. And people told me the code didn't work yesterday. So I made a new code because I can do that. And so Lynn 1111 is now the code for your $11 discount off of the registration. I'm always going to make sure that Lent is accessible and affordable for everybody else. Maybe other programs. Rev has a program coming up that that'll be an investment. And so we want to make sure that you have what you need in order to power through your New Year intentions, whatever you've been working on, just wanting to feel better, lifted, and more capable and able, and in alignment with who you really are. These are the reasons why we're doing this. And so, And so I love that that the community is expanding, and I appreciate you all. If you're checking it out, share it. Share, because there is somebody out there that needs to hear what we're saying, and we want to make sure they get an opportunity. Yes.
So on this past Sunday, and I'm going to share this with the larger body on Sunday. I'm not going to share it this Sunday. But there's a young man who flew in from Houston. Said God told him to come to Chicago. He flew in from Houston came to CUT. I think this is his first time at CUT. I had a christening to do after service, so I didn't get an opportunity to meet and greet. And he came to the Lenten service yesterday, and so I got to meet the young man. And he said he got what he was supposed to get in his journey. And I just think that's so amazing, and it shows the kind of intentionality required to be active in your own rescue, to be a force in your own life. And so I just want to shout out Leander and my sisters who come in from Milwaukee, and the sisters who come in from New Jersey, like my folks who come in from another part of Texas, like folks who also feel compelled to show up on the campus to get what they need to get. And I'm excited that we get to share it with you wherever you are around the globe. We know that God is an unlimited presence and power, and I'm really excited that we get to be with you and show up for you wherever you are and be a stand for your greatness and support you. And I'm excited for this Believe journey and the opportunity any and every one of us have to immerse ourselves in this spiritual transformation process. I'm excited for the breakthroughs, and we look forward to hearing the testimonies.
Absolutely. You guys will see Rev's face in there too, because I have a day that I'll have some speakers come in. I think it's going to be Saturday conversations, but we'll talk about what works for you, Rev. And but it's going to be it's a dynamic space to be in. It's addictive too. Like, you know, they get me every year. Like, we need to keep this going. I'm like, okay. It's like running a marathon at full speed. Let's run another one. Like,
right.
Like, I'm gonna take a break for a moment, but it's good. It's good. So yeah, just be blessed. Enjoy your week off. Rev, I know that, you know, sermon preparation is a work of heart, and so yeah, I'm grateful that you get a chance to rest and reset. And so I know you're bringing the power when you come back in, because there's nothing like a rested minister.
This Sunday is me. Last Sunday is Gavin. So I'm this Sunday.
You got one more. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here for this Sunday. The final Sunday of the month is Heritage Sunday. I'm here for this Sunday, and on this Sunday, we've got a special treat at the end of service. So I'm going to encourage everybody to stick around for that.
Yes.
Yeah, we got a birthday treat for you on this coming Sunday. So I'm actually in the pulpit on this Sunday.
Oh,
so
nice.
So we'll be back here next week. Won't be 2 weeks. We'll be back here next week.
Okay. Got you. All right, everybody. Well, be blessed today. Have a lovely rest of your day, rest of your evening. And we'll be back next week. I'll post the link so you guys can see when we're coming and have a little bit of advance notice. Bless you real good. Be joy, be peace, be love, and we will see you soon.
Peace and blessings.